All right, I think we're live. So welcome around to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Sorry, this one's a little late. I was going to start at 9 like usual, but had a birthday celebration that ran over for a family member. Yeah, been a little bit of a chaotic evening here. We had a car accident nearby and thankfully not us, but had to turn around. So a little bit behind on everything. But thanks for stopping by. And yeah, I hope it's not too late for most of you. We'll be done in an hour here. But I see Wheatman's already joined in, Luke and Theodore, Lancelot, Danny, and Chad. I won't go into the whole thing because I feel like it's pointless. Most of the time, everyone that's here early are all members or knows the deal. So I'll just nix that probably here going forward. But Wheatman says, good evening, Matt and fellow car enthusiasts. Hope all is doing well. And thanks for using the little emojis there. Looking good with those. And I think there's also, by the way, a new leaderboard kind of thing. I think YouTube is trying. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it or not, but I think there's a leaderboard of who's most active, I think, in commenting or something. And I don't know why they need to keep score with that, but I think that's something in addition to the little extra badges, just to try and make these live streams a little bit more engaging, I suppose, for everyone that hangs out and participates. But Wheatman also says, how are EV sales doing this month, and what will it be after the federal tax credit goes away? I don't know. I mean, usually we don't know actual sales until after the month, and everyone's reported. But I haven't been keeping an eye on any of the inventory because that'll be a good hint of whether or not there is anything, selling out faster or, if there's still plenty of supply. I think there were some vehicles that were hard to come by now. I think Honda Prologue is pretty hard to get at this point, and a few others just because, again, everyone's just snatching them up like crazy. So I don't know. It's a good question. I think we'll probably have to wait until October 1st or 2nd before the car companies say what kind of boom they had in the final hurrah here for incentivized EVs. So it'll be interesting to see. And Luke says, I missed Sunday, had to get up at 3 a.m. Monday for work. Been a rough week. Sorry to hear that. I said all my coolant leaked out while I was on the turnpike. AC stopped working yesterday, but got it fixed today. Man, yeah, I see. I agree with Wheatman. It can only get better, hopefully. So fingers crossed that it does, but sorry you've had a rough week and totally get it. And Lancelot, thanks so much for the very generous super chat. I really appreciate that. He says, my spot so far this week was a dark blue C3 Vet. Very nice spot. That's awesome. That's the C3s. I don't see those very often. I'm not sure how often you see them, but that's awesome. And my fun little spot just this evening, I saw a Suzuki Equator, the Frontier pickup truck that just has the Suzuki stuff on it. And that's something you don't see too often, at least around here. So that was fun. And thanks so much again, Lancelot, for the super chat. And let me see. So Wheatman also says, enjoyed the Genesis GV80 review. It just needs a hybrid for better gas mileage. Awesome SUV. Yeah, and I'm hoping that maybe they even put in the hybrid system that we see in the Palisade that's coming. I think that could very well fit nicely in GV80, and maybe that's what they have planned. Maybe they'll do something different. We'll have to see. And Theodore says, just saw a Nissan GTR Nismo. Got sad. I always get depressed when you see the last version of the car you love. I can relate to that for sure. And hopefully we see a new GTR someday. But always awesome to see, especially Nismos. Those are pretty rare too. So just fun to see, I'm sure. And Lancelot hopes everyone's having a good week too, and hope you're doing well too, Lancelot. And Danny says, hello, drove Monday, yesterday and today. Rare spots are a Ford Fusion Energy and a 2002 Chrysler Sebring convertible. Nearly died with my brother on Monday. We'll explain that later. Well, glad you're doing okay. All kinds of close calls. I had just yesterday on the highway, there was someone slammed on their brakes and I had to do a quick little emergency maneuver. It's just part of driving out there as you're becoming well aware of as a new driver. And Chad says, driving to work today, I saw a Lexus LFA. Wow, very nice. Yeah, that's another very rare one. You guys are really getting some good spots here recently. It's awesome. Happy to see you here, Chad. Vishal says hi as well. Thanks for stopping by, Vishal. He says, my spot today was a Gen 4 Prelude manual. Guy was driving it home from work. What a cool car to drive to work. I bet. Yeah, that would be really fun. Preludes are great. I loved, the one Prelude I reviewed, which was Gen 4, I believe, or maybe it was Gen 5. I can't keep my generations straight, but yeah, they're fun cars. And Joe, thanks for stopping by. And Stone Killer. And Stone Killer says, "What's up? It's the dude from the Parallax filming." That's awesome. Well, thanks for stopping by, man. Met him on a TV thing that we were doing. I'm keeping quiet about it because I think that's technically what we're supposed to do. But as many of you know, I have been an extra in the past a long time ago in a bunch of different movies and TV shows. And I had about a 10-year hiatus, but I was able to get back on set here last week and have some fun in that. And so you'll see more about that next year, and I'll talk more about it whenever I'm able to. But it's awesome to see you here, though, man. Hope you're doing well. And Michelle says, yeah, he's excited about the LFA as well. Chad says also, I saw a Cadillac EXT. I didn't even know they existed, but kind of cool. Yeah, that was just the Chevy Avalanche that they, put the Cadillac stuff on, and I think they sold pretty decently well. But yeah, that's rare though. I haven't seen one of those in a long time. So nice spot there too. And Luke says the new Nissan Leaf is a hell of a deal. I'm not an EV guy, but I give him credit where credit is due. Yeah, I think, and the fact that that's not even the base one, there's going to be a cheaper one even under that. It's going to be, less power, I think slightly smaller battery too, which would really bring the cost down. But I mean, already at 30 grand is fantastic. And I think that'll be a hit, just like how, they really price Nissan Kicks very well on the gas side. And people, are buying a bunch of those. I think that the Leaf is going to be the same. And I think especially, not only is Leaf, starting off on a very good foot, but I think once we eventually do see the new Bolt, which sounds like it's just the old Bolt that's, maybe given a little bit of a nip tuck kind of refresh, that's going to make the Leaf look even more impressive with an actual more crossover like, styling, and having, again, an actual new vehicle instead of just something that's old, being, amped up a little bit. So I really do think Nissan is on the right track. I know it's very easy to, write them off, and, everyone just jumps to like, oh yeah, let me bankrupt, this year or next year or whatever. But I really think there's still more life in them. I think they got some good ideas, some good execution. The stuff that they've been coming out with has been very good for the most part. Not perfect, but very, very good, much better than in the past. And I'm cautiously optimistic that Nissan's going to be okay. And I'm glad you're impressed by the Leaf there as well, Luke. And Theodore says, I think you got the beard growing, looking like Wolverine. Yeah, I just been a busy week and a half here, so I'm definitely needing to shave. Probably tomorrow I'll finally shave it again. But let me see. Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat too. He says, as an employee of Whataburger, I can get up to a $3 grand discount on any new Ford or GM vehicle. I saw online that the track starts at $20,500. Maybe there's some incentives there to knock it down, because I thought that it was around 23 now. Or 22 before destination. So maybe there's some discounts. That'd be great if you can get them, for 20 grand, and then you get a $3 grand discount on top of that. That would be awesome. Trax is great. I was very impressed with it. It's a ton of space for the money, and having a turbo and all that at that price point is also very nice. A lot of the other competitors are naturally aspirated in that ultra cheap kind of segment there, and Trax is, I think, very nice. Much better than the old one, that's for sure. And thank you so much for the super chat, Jordan. And let me see. Zachary says, I think we're in the end of times. This week I saw a Jeep without ducts, a Mustang without mods, and an Altima without a dent. So, yeah, sounds like you've warped into another timeline there, Zachary. I'm kind of jealous. And let us know what it's like in the alternate universe there. That's pretty funny. And Reginald's asking if Acura is shutting down business. I don't think so. Acura is very strong. They still sell a ton of MDXs, even if we have TLX going away and others. But no, Acura is very much not going anywhere. And Danny says, so how about I almost died on Monday night? Me and my brother are on our way home from band practice. We were about 2 minutes away from home when an F80 M3 decided to think, let's blow a yield, and went flying out at about 30 miles per hour when I was doing 45 and a 40, and they just stopped. I laid on the horn and brakes, slamming the brakes, sent my phone and my wallet from the center console to the pedal box. Then after that, I straight screamed, learn how to drive. Yeah, and especially with performance cars, you got to be careful, because if you're not in a car that has brakes as big as theirs, they can stop a whole lot faster than you can, and that can get everyone into some trouble. So, yeah, you got to give performance cars a wide berth there for sure. But glad you're all right, and yeah, close calls like that they'll get more and more normal as you get more and more experience with driving, and unfortunately, that kind of stuff won't even phase you eventually. I mean, I had a close call. I think it was earlier today. Someone just blew a stop sign in front of me. Another person, I can't remember what they did. Like, again, it's so inconsequential anymore that it goes out of my head 30 seconds after it happens, because it's just so commonplace. It's just one of those things you'll get used to. And Lancelot says he usually sees C6s and C7s, not so much the C3. Well, I mean, all Corvettes are fun, but yeah, C3 is definitely one of my favorites, which I think is an unpopular opinion. C3s don't get a lot of love, but they're very cool in my opinion. I want to review one someday. And Michelle says, saw an article that Mercedes will bring back buttons to their interiors for current and future models. Thank goodness. Yeah, that's great news. I hadn't heard that. That's very encouraging. I think it's, especially with Mercedes, they did so many screens, and screens are cheap, and it's not luxurious. It can feel high tech if you do it well, but especially I think the new CLA is the biggest offender to me. It's just like zero design effort. I mean, it's a straight up and down panel of screens, like no design integration whatsoever, and it's just lazy, and it just saves a bunch of money. It's just trying to juice that profit margin. If you can have 3 cheap little LCD screens slapped in there, and you can get away with not doing any other switches or buttons, I mean, they save so much money. And I mean, it's not like the cars are cheap, so it's really it's corporate greed, honestly, of just trying to maximize these profits. And I know, again, a lot of companies are really having to conserve money with the transition to EVs and stuff, but still, you can only get away with so much, especially as a luxury brand, before people are just not buying it, literally and figuratively. So yeah, it's good to hear. We'll see how fast they can actually integrate that. But Reginald also asks, are the newer CT5s the most reliable Cadillac? I think it probably comes down to what powertrain you get. It seems like the Turbo 4 in those isn't amazing. It's direct injected, get kind of gunked up over time. It seems like the V6s are pretty decent, though. Even the twin turbo ones seem to be pretty okay. I haven't seen a ton of long-term usage in them to know definitively one way or another. I haven't really heard much about long ownership experiences, high mileage kind of examples. But typically, reliability continues to improve incrementally with every new generation for the most part. So I would like to think that it's probably the most reliable of those Cadillacs. I think, there's still many others that are more reliable. I think an Escalade typically is, very reliable. It uses a tried and true V8, very high volume vehicle that's had a lot of the, kinks worked out of it pretty quickly. So I think if you want most reliable Cadillac, I'd probably go Escalade, but I think that all the other stuff should be pretty decent these days too. And Wheatman's asking if I got the new iPhone yet. No, they launch on Friday. So Sunday's live stream will be the first one with that. And we'll see, if it's any better with the quality or not. We'll have to find out. But yeah, looking forward to that here on Friday. And Isaac says, also nice to see you, Isaac. It's been a while. Hope you're doing well. He says, amazing lease deals on the Nero EVs right now. I just leased a Wind trim in Pittsburgh with only the first payment and tags down for $199 per month at Shorkeys. That's awesome. Well, congrats on getting one. That's great. Nero's great. And I'm working on an article for Car Buzz about how Nero is very underrated. Actually, the article might be going up soon, but Nero's is very underrated, and the EV version. I haven't actually tried the second gen. I did the first gen Nero EV, but haven't tried the new one. But even the first gen was really great, and yeah, $200 a month, for any of these things is really solid. And it's a lot of car for the money, obviously. And so glad you're able to get that, and glad that Shorkey's dealing. I tried working on them for the Fiat and also for some Hyundais and Kias and stuff, back in February, and they just weren't willing to deal at at that time. But now, obviously, everyone's down to crunch time here, 2 more weeks or so, and then if these EVs are on the lot, you're going to be the dealer will be the one that'll be having to pay giant discounts. But let me see. I hope it treats you well too, Isaac. Vishal says, I still see plenty of Jeeps with ducks and dented up Altimas. I do see less modded Mustangs lately, though. Interesting. Around here, most of them are still modded. That's I wonder if there's something going on there. I don't know. I'd be curious. But Chad says, watching your Genesis review, it made me think about what's an acceptable price range for a single model. If I recall, it was 20-ish from base to top. Then there's the top of the line Mustangs. Yeah, I think Mustang's probably one of the best examples. That and Corvette of that range. I think Corvette probably takes the cake between, what is a base one now? Probably 65, 67, something like that, up to, I think 01X is, I don't know if they announced pricing or not. I think it's well over 200, I know, but I think 01's already kind of over that anyway. So maybe it's like 250 or something. So you got like 200 grand spread. That's probably got to take the cake. I mean, Mustang's probably a runner up, especially if you count GTD, because those are like 350. So actually, maybe that is the winner. If that goes, from 40 grand for a base EcoBoost or whatever, all the way up to like 350. So those are probably definitely the top two, I think. But yeah, it's a fun mental exercise to try and think of others like that. And let me see. Reginald says he's considering trading in his TLX for a CT5. Yay or nay? That comes down to what you value, what you are looking for in the vehicle. And also where you drive, things like that. I do one-on-one car consultations. So if you'd like to, dive more into that, on my website, I have, you can sign up for one of those if you want. But I mean, surface level stuff, I can say, I think TLX is a little more comfortable, but CT5 is by far the better handler. And I think it also has a slightly better back seat as far as the roominess goes. And I'd say tech is better in the Cadillac. Powertrain is fairly even between the two of them, honestly, if we're talking, regular CT5 and regular TLX. I think long-term reliability, I'd feel more confident driving a TLX high miles than a CT5, though, especially if we're talking four-cylinder versus four-cylinder. I think Honda will do the better Turbo 4 versus Cadillac. But yeah, so I mean, so it comes out again how much you value each of those components. If you really value reliability, I'd probably stick with your TLX. If you're going 200,000 plus miles and you want something that's going to last a long time, you're usually better off, in the Acura compared to the Cadillac. Now, if again, you are wanting something that's more dynamic feeling, the rear-wheel drive basis of the CT5 would be, the much more dynamic pick of the two. Yeah, so I mean, they're both great cars. I would happily daily drive either one of them. It just comes down to, again, what your focus is and what your what your priorities are, honestly, at the end of the day. I think also Cadillac has a very good stereo in the CT5, but I do think the TLX is slightly better with the roof-mounted speakers of the ELS. Just such a good stereo. But yeah, they're both very good. So hopefully it helps you a little bit there. And let me know if there's any other context you want to provide. I can maybe help it to sway one way or the other, if there's any other stuff you want to share. And Jordan says, I predict in the future that at least two or all of the big three are venturing into air travel, commercial flights, flying cars, etc. Yeah, that's something that continues to be tossed around. And I know there was some new regulatory approval this week for one of the drone car kind of companies to experiment more with that and do like beta flights. Um, so, I know Hyundai in particular has really been doing a bunch of that, and trying to really, pioneer that space a little bit. We'll see again who gets there first. I don't know about the American companies though. I don't recall any kind of concepts from any of them or any even investments really. I think the idea of flying cars and just even like drone, commercial drone flights and things like that. I think if we're talking about something where it is still like a commercial thing and like mass transit kind of where you aren't owning it and you're not controlling it yourself, that I could see a little bit more of. But the whole flying car thing, I still think that's one of those utopian ideas that I maybe if we get to a point where everyone's fully autonomous and everyone's okay with that, then you could have this stuff because there's no way to actually let people pilot it themselves because I mean look at how terrible people are driving when they're on the ground. Could you imagine if everyone was flying around in the air? Like it would you definitely don't want that. So I think if we kind of get to that point where everything can just be totally automated, then maybe, but it's also one of those things that with a lot of innovation, it could go further, but then, you look at all the other setbacks and all the other basic things we can't figure out as human beings. We can't even coexist peacefully. Those types of things of, trying to have, I mean, there would always be greed that gets in the way. There would always be, someone or someone else who's, putting up a fight against it, doesn't want it for this reason or that reason or whatever. And, I just maybe I don't know. It's just me. Maybe it's just me, but I just feel like it's hard to be optimistic about tech advancements unless there's a clear, gigantic profit to be made by the giant tech companies. And I just don't know. With this growing wealth gap that we have, can anyone afford to pay for a flying Uber or whatever they end up doing with that? I mean, I think people can't even afford regular Ubers at this point, in many cases, so unless we fix the wealth gap in the world, just in America and everything else, I mean, like, it's just one of those things that maybe we could do it technically and maybe it'd be a fun plaything for the billionaires or whatever. But they're already in private jets and helicopters anyway. So it's like, who is it actually for? Because anyone you're trying to market it to, you got to fix the affordability crisis in this country before you ever try and sell people of flying anything, So that's, I think, going to be the biggest problem is just, the market case for it. And you see how terrified people are even of EVs and, to tell people, and people are scared of autonomous cars and rightly so in some cases, but so like we're so far behind. We can't even take the baby step to an EV, let alone the giant leap to an autonomous car on the ground and then an autonomous electric flying thing. It's going to be hundreds of years. I think before, I mean, maybe we'll have a humanity breakthrough and, maybe the aliens will show up and everything will get peaceful and we'll have a greater bond as humankind. And then we can all come together and do cool stuff like that. But I don't think, I think even if we have the technology, it won't happen for a long, long time. And YH, thank you so much for super chat. He says, stereo, I don't even put any music on. The Coyote is my personal soprano, and Scat Packs stay getting capped. I'm glad you're still out there enjoying life, Etch. And yeah, I know what you mean. A good exhaust note, oftentimes for me, beats a stereo any day of the week. A lot of times I don't listen to music, especially in the Bullet. I very rarely actually use the stereo unless I was on a long road trip. Otherwise, that stereo never got used because it's just so good to just listen to that engine. Let me see here. Farm 30 says, do you think the end of the month will bring any EV prices down? I was debating getting a Mach-E, and dealers with 50 plus on lots are going off MSRP with only a couple thousand incentives. Yeah, I mean, I talked about this whenever we got the Lyric that we got, back in July. we were planning on getting a Mach-E. That was kind of the idea was, they had the green that, Beth really liked and some nice improvements for 25. And, if they had been willing to give good deals and the incentives were good corporate wise, we probably wouldn't have really cross shopped as much. But, whenever I was just getting these crappy quotes, I'm like, surely there's got to be better, deals out there. And I saw other better deals, and I saw people on like the Lease Hacker website. They were getting these phenomenal deals on these way nicer cars. And I'm like, why would I bother? And I mean, I went back and forth with a couple dealers. Once I got the price quote on the Lyriq, I'm like, dude, you guys realize like you're quoting me something higher than this 64 grand Lyriq in your $50,000 Mach-E. And they tried to, oh, well, it's still a good deal, blah, blah. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I'm going to go get the car that's way nicer for less money. Have a nice day. And, I don't know what Ford's deal is. Maybe they're happy with Mach-E sales so far for this year. And if it just stops in October, which I think you'll see a lot of these EVs just crater, especially just because we are satisfying all the slight demand that is there. And once you exhaust that demand and you tack on an extra $7,500, in price, I mean, I fully expect EV sales, even at least temporarily, to go to almost zero. Now, I think they will rebound as, again, we've replenished the demand and we have people, getting out of their leases from the past couple of years here that need one and are sticking with an EV who will, still go for that and, try and work for the best deal they can on their own without the incentive. But I fully expect like EV sales are basically done for the year after this month. And, I'm surprised that, I mean, I guess, kind of see in July, dealers playing hardball still a little bit. But yeah, if a dealer's got 50 Mach-E's on their lot and we got 2 weeks to go and they're still playing hardball with you, that dealer wants to be married to those Mach-E's. That's the bottom line. I guess they love paying, the lot fees there that they have to pay to finance their inventory. They're going to be sitting on those Mach-E's because there's no way you're moving them after this month. Not for a while. But I mean, there's all kinds of dealers that do all kinds of stupid stuff every day, and not my circus, not my monkeys. Doesn't matter, just go on to a dealer that actually is, going to deal with you and give you a good deal. And if that's not Ford, go to, there's lots of other good stuff out there. Mach-E is very good, but these days there's tons of great choices. So I would say, yeah, just go for something else if you're up for that. Or, if you go for a used one, you can still get the used credit. I think if it's under 25 or 30, if you're really wanting a Mach-E and you want one for a good price, pick up a used one because they've created it in value. So that's the other way to go about it. So hopefully you can definitely get something before the end of the month, just because you don't want to miss out on that savings. But Chad says some 3-row SUVs make me think about being rear-ended. I looked, and it's basically only Judge's mitigation, not actually crash tested for rear passengers getting hit from behind. So about I'm trying to see. So about the IHS. Yeah, I mean, so rear ending, that's not really a high focus. And the good thing too about these large vehicles, especially if we're talking about new large vehicles, it's yeah, they judge the mitigation with the IHS, but there are federal tests. And I believe IHS actually does also do tests because they have a sled. Basically, they just test the seats of how well the headrest works to, restrain you. They do test that. And I know, again, the NHTSA does as well. But, the good thing is with modern cars, again, from anything, I think 2017 and newer has automatic emergency braking. And, most people, I don't think, turn that off, so that's really the nice thing to know about modern cars is if you're worried about getting hit by one, your chances are a lot less because those systems have been proven to work. They're way lower in rear-ending accidents or severity of rear-ending accidents. Sometimes they still happen just because you're following too closely and the system can't react fast enough to completely stop the accident. But, it reacts way faster than you brings down that speed and makes it less severe of an impact. So that is the one good thing about stuff like that. And that's kind of the bargaining that I do with things like Cybertruck and Hummer EV is they're terrifying. They're 9,000 pounds, and you want to stay far away from one. But at least they do have the automated systems to hopefully mitigate stuff, or just drastically reduce the severity of those kinds of incidents, to minimize just the dangerousness of those vehicles and the insane weight of them. I mean, same thing goes for like our Cadillac Lyric. That's 6,000 pounds too. It's a heavy vehicle, but it's got all that stuff to make sure that it's protecting not just its occupants, but also the other people around it as best as it can. And let me see here. Danny says, here's the car trivia of the night from me. What is the rarest car made from Geo? It's the 91 Prism GSI hatchback. Only 237 of them were made in 1991. Wow, that is very rare. Wonder how many of those are left today. It's got to be probably a dozen or two tops. That's crazy. Thanks for sharing, Danny. And Mr. 705 says, how's the consulting going? Are you promoting it anywhere besides here? No, just on here. Well, here, and also, I have it on the homepage of my website for anyone who, clicks on for the new car quotes tab, which, that has, still been very popular. You see it there just as the landing, on the homepage. And I also do mention it towards the end of some of my car reviews as well. Whenever, especially if it's one where I'm not worried about it being super long, I'll try and incorporate that a little bit at the end there as well. So that's pretty much it. But I've had 3 calls so far, so it's not booming. I actually did tweak pricing a little bit. I brought it down a few bucks as well, just because I monitoring the website traffic, and there are people going to the page and then not signing up. So either people are just curious, or people are getting there and saying, oh, wait, I have to pay for this, or, oh, wait, it's more expensive than I want to pay. And I'm just trying to, lower that barrier of entry a little bit there, just in an attempt to try and get, more of those calls scheduled. But it's slow so far. I mean, the people that I've helped are very thankful. They're very happy, that they've had that, and they said they'll certainly recommend it and use it again in the future. But yeah, so far it's slow going. We'll see what happens. It sounded like a good idea. Maybe it still will be someday, but for now, very much a niche thing, it seems. But it's all good. It's worth a try, and it's up there now, and we'll see where it goes. But Luke says, a friend of mine looking for a car has a RAV4 as a rental, and he says it's a little too small, and I'm telling him to try a Crown Signia. Yeah, Crown Signia, it'll be a little bit better, primarily in the cargo area, but rear seat is still not huge in those. Honestly, it might be even the same or even slightly worse than RAV4. I'm not exactly sure. They're very close. If you want more space, I mean, I guess it's just a rental, so it probably doesn't matter. Or maybe so he's looking for a car. So if he's shopping and he just happens to have the RAV4, I mean, if he wants to stay with Toyota, the easy choice is just go for Highlander or Grand Highlander is the next step up there. Grand Highlander, especially since it's so close in price to Highlander these days, I just go for the Grand Highlander because it's newer, it's more space, it's better. Now that might be too much space. Unfortunately, Toyota doesn't have a good happy medium. There's, I mean, Highlander I'd say is fine because it is I guess the next logical step up there, but I still wish that they would have done a larger unibody 2-row vehicle, that to just compete with Honda Passport and stuff like that. And they just, they don't have anything. They just tell people to go buy 4Runners or whatever, which also doesn't have a ton of space, or Land Cruiser, also, a fairly tight back seat actually. So it's like they nailed it with Grand Highlander, but then everything else is a little tight sometimes. And, even new RAV4 here, there's no point in waiting for that if you're looking for just more space, because that's the same amount of space as, this current generation. So, yeah, I just say Grand Highlander. And that's why they sell tons of them, because I think, for a lot of people, that's exactly what they want and need. And I'm glad that Toyota finally has that at least. But I do love Crown Signia. And I don't know about you guys, but I've seen a ton of Crown Signias, like way more than I was expecting, because they're production limited. I think last year, they were limited to like 16,000 units. I think this year it was in the 20s. Maybe that has since changed, or they've adjusted for the higher demand. But I see a lot of Crown Signias. I mean, they're not quite as common as new Camrys, but not far off. And I'm actually again, just very pleased with how many of them I see around here, because I thought it'd be a real rare niche thing like the regular crown, and instead they seem to be fairly popular, which is great. I love it myself, so I'm glad others do too. But just surprised people are actually being able to get their hands on them. And Chad says, do manufacturers have a set test for audio? There seems like so many approaches from headrest to roof mount. Do they let the audio engineers take charge in design? It comes down to, what company you're partnering with and how you're going about it. Because, there are certain vehicles where they kind of have their hands tied. I think a really good example of this actually is the Mustang. The Mustang, at least for S550, it initially, the B&O Play thing came in, I think, in 2018 or 2019. Before that, it was just a regular, I can't even remember the name. It was some crappier kind of stereo system, but it was never really great. And then they brought in the B&O Play, but they had to stick with the same subwoofer placement, the same speaker placement, and sure, they changed out the internals, but you kind of have your hands tied with how much you can engineer that sound if you are stuck with the same placements. And there's others where they really got aggressive, like the Mazda 3, where they worked with Bose and they said, hey, look, like, we're not going to do the usual speaker placement. We're going to not have speakers in the bottom of the doors at all. We're going to put those speakers in the footwell for cleaner bass, and it actually works phenomenally well. And that's why the Mazda 3 is the best in its segment still for stereo, in my opinion. So like there's instances like that where, Bose says, okay, yeah, let's get crazy here. And it comes down to, each company's partnership with that, stereo company. And then if they're doing it in-house, then you can really kind of custom design that, for whatever your exact needs are. And I think, everyone, I don't know how it works as far as the purchasing side of it, as far as, choosing what you want to do, but like a lot of times they do similar things. So like Nissan Kicks, for example, had the Bose personal kind of headrest speakers on the last generation Kicks, and that has continued and carried over to the new generation, just in a new and improved form. Why doesn't Bose offer that same thing to others? I don't know. We do have other headrest speakers, and like Bang & Olufsen now has it in the new Audis that I've been wowed with over and over again. We have AKG doing it in the Cadillacs and stuff. But a lot of times it is, just a partnership and saying, okay, well, here's what we can do, here's what we can't do, and trying to go back and forth. I think at the end of the day, the OEM wins out because, the stereo company is clearly, the weaker one of that combo, who doesn't have the position to say and really make demands. So it's more so, they're serving the OEM and saying, okay, what would you like us to do? Some of them, whenever we're talking about some of these major shifts, like Klipsch doing their stuff here in the Nissans and also in the Ram, that's like, their first forays into cars. And I think with that, you kind of are bargaining with like, okay, we want to be the first to have this new high-end name in our cars. And I think that gives them a little bit more leeway to say, hey, we're really going to, do a really intense sound design and custom tailor this to the car from development, day one, pretty much. And I actually talked to some of the Klipsch engineers whenever I was on the Nissan Armada drive back, when was that? Yeah, late last year. And it was really cool with, they were kind of, they don't go into all the details, but kind of saying how, like we decided we want to, move this speaker and we need to put this in a slightly different position, and going back to the engineers and saying, hey, can we change this? Can we do that? And trying to, again, really dial it all in. It's a lot of back and forth, I'm sure, but it's very cool. We're seeing these expansions like the Macintosh stereos we have in the Wagoneers, super awesome, and having all the little different quirks to how they all go about everything is really fun to see. But I think it really just varies most of the time is the short answer after the long tangent. But it's fun to see so many better stereos, because for such a long time it was not a whole lot of upgrades, and we're really spoiled with amazing sound these days. Lance Swat says he just wants Rosie the robot made instead of flying cars. Yeah, it sounds like Elon's working on that with the robot or whatever. I don't know if those will ever get better. But it seems like the robot thing, that's an example of a utopian thing that is incentivized, because the second they can get that off the ground, then you have to, or you're able to quit hiring people, which is like the greatest thing ever for most of these giant corporations. And if they can buy some little bot to do everything and not have to pay salaries, then that's music to their ears. So I think that's one of those unfortunate, like, dystopian things that is going to probably become a reality sooner rather than later, because again, it enriches all those people more, and that's who's running the show these days, especially more than ever. But yeah, I think that it's probably a few years away before we start to see automated McDonald's attendants and all that kind of stuff. And Jordan says the mic tonight is definitely on point, Matt. No crackle. That's awesome. I'm glad that it's getting better. I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I didn't change anything, but I'm happy that it's good, and hopefully maybe even get slightly better here with the new iPhone this week. And Michael says, so our 2018 WRX died. We got an Outback Wilderness. Well, congrats to the Outback Wilderness. Sorry to hear about the WRX, but I'm glad hopefully you got that resolved with Subaru. And hopefully, yeah, you're not out too much money as a result of that. But sorry that was such a disappointment. But hopefully the Outback treats you better. And kudos for staying with Subaru. A lot of companies, or a lot of people I hear who have lemons or who get burned by a car company, they never go back. So I hope the Outback is better for you. A lot of people have really good luck with Subarus, so hopefully the WRX was just a fluke and you'll be good from here on out. But keep our fingers crossed for you. And Dan says, you can just take me out before I let a robot car drive me around. There you go. Yeah, so that's that's the kind of stuff that we're up against here. I mean, I've heard good things from the people who have gotten in the Waymo cars. They think it's a little crazy at first, but then they're like, wow, this is very much the same experience you get with a human driver. And so as long as they make it safe, and really, really highly test that, again, I've always been for autonomous cars, as long as it's a choice and something that insurance companies don't lay on extra costs to real drivers, which I think they probably will. I think that's I think that is, if there's two dominoes that need to fall here before it goes fully autonomous. I mean, because I think the technology, it's only a matter of time. It's getting there pretty quickly. We see that again with Waymo and others. I think that, one, you need to figure out the liability, because car companies don't want to be liable. But if you're not in control and you're not supposed to be in control, then they can't blame it on you either. So once they figure out that components of who's going to actually pay if this thing crashes, once that's figured out, then I think the next logical step is, okay, well, if that's been dealt with, then they're going to make a big push for the autonomous thing, just because it's safer and most people just want to stare at their phones all the time anyway. So it's kind of a win-win. And as long as, again, it's still a choice and enthusiasts don't have to pay a giant insurance bill, which I think we probably will have to at that point, that's the thing that concerns me, is like, we'll be the crazy people on the road that still drive our cars. And as a result, we'll have to pay a much higher insurance, rates. And that will effectively tax people out of driving themselves and forcing them into autonomy, and making driving a car a luxury for the rich, much like we're seeing manuals are getting more and more exclusive, and we're seeing all these other features and things that sports cars in general more and more are becoming only rich people luxuries. And so that's my only concern. But I mean, from an enthusiast standpoint, if we can drive, or if you can afford to, in that kind of a world, at least everyone who doesn't want to drive is now being driven perfectly by a computer, and they're in the right lane, staying out of the way. Left lane can be basically an Autobahn, and highways will be a lot smoother. There'll be less traffic. There's a lot of perks to it. Again, it's just the dark side of that we have to worry about with just having it be too expensive. So we'll see what happens, but we still got a long time, I think, for that, because again, I think the liability component is going to really hold stuff up for a long time. But I could be wrong. We'll see. It's very interesting to think about how because obviously it affects all of us, but especially me doing this job. If I'm just judging how Waymo drives stuff in the future, that could be a little less fun. So we'll see what happens. But like I always come back to, the average age of a vehicle on the road is 12.6 years now. It's gonna be a long time before those cars age off the road, especially these brand new cars everyone's buying right now. Like, give those 12.6 years. And I mean, so it's going to be 20 plus years before it's actually all over the place. Same with EVs. It's going to take a long time for that to become the majority. So don't have to worry. Change won't happen too fast if it does. And Jordan, thank you so much for super chat as voices. Future, any way for nuclear powered vehicles? I don't think so. Mostly just because that's really, really far out there. Just because, I mean, EVs and even hydrogen, is plentiful to do what you need a car to do. Nuclear is like overpowered. There's no reason to have, the risks of nuclear, the waste of nuclear, all that kind of stuff. Whenever you again can have perfectly clean hydrogen or electric vehicles. Nuclear, I think, comes into play more when we're talking about very high powered stuff. There's talks of, like some of these UFOs might be nuclear powered, things like that, or, just nuclear subs, and things where you're not carrying commercial, travelers, payloads, things like that. I think, because that's the other thing. People are already apprehensive about even a hydrogen powered plane, because there's talks of, aircraft possibly going in that direction, but just because a plane full of batteries is just going to be way too heavy, at least with modern battery technology. So, there's been the idea of hydrogen. It's like, oh, then everyone talks about the Hindenburg, and it's like, it just turns into this, like, no one's ever going to plane that's powered by hydrogen. Could you imagine nuclear in anything remotely close to you? I mean, it just would freak people out too much. So I think, again, we'd have to evolve to a much higher level as far as humans go before we could be trusted with our own little personal nuclear powered vehicles. But, again, who knows? It's a fun thing to think about. Thanks for the super chat there, Jordan. Let me see. Chad says, I got slight anxiety watching you pass the gas station on the Genesis review while the tank was almost empty every time you showed the dashboard. Yeah. That one, I ran it down pretty good. So, but yeah, no, it's fine. I usually, if it's below 50, then I'll stop and fill up. But no, it's all good. I always make sure I leave enough gas in there, plenty of gas in there for the media fleet people to pick it up and get to the gas station without having to stress. That's funny, Chad. And Isaac says, if you want to borrow my new Nero EV for a couple of days for your channel or Car Buzz article, feel free. I have 2 other cars to drive. Well, I appreciate the offer. Thanks so much, Isaac. I mean, I think, unfortunately, I'm kind of going to be shying away from EVs. I'll still review EVs, but until we figure out where the dust settles with pricing and consumer sentiment after incentives, I think there's going to be zero demand, at least for the rest of this year, just because, it's like an iPhone thing or something. Everyone runs out and buys them, and they gotta, it's kind of a deadline. And then, once everyone has them, you don't need to buy a new one every, few months. You have it and you're good for a while. So I think you're going to see that kind of thing. And so, as much as I love EVs, they don't ever usually get great views on this channel anyway. And then especially, again, going into the fall and winter with no incentive, it's just no one's going to watch those videos, unfortunately. So I probably won't take you up on that, Isaac, but appreciate it. I'll keep an eye out for a Nero EV. Whenever I'm driving around, though, I'll wave hi if I see you. But I'm going to still do a few EVs. And I think especially super high-end EVs, those buyers don't care about a tax incentive for $7,500. That's chump change to them. So those types of things, I'll probably still do. But any kind of the affordable EVs, I'm going to do Nissan Leaf and things like that where it can overcome the incentive. But these kind of like awkward in between vehicles where they're not being bought by people wealthy enough that they don't have to worry about incentives, but it's not cheap enough to sell on its own merits potentially. that's kind of that awkward middle ground of those really mainstream vehicles. Where I think there's going to be some resistance there, and that's kind of going to be why I'm going to go one extreme or the other with EV reviews probably for the short term here and see where the dust settles. And let me see. Wait, man says if you like flying vehicles, check out the Jetson one. You are the drone, right? Yeah. Is there a new thing actually called Jetson, or I don't know if it's referring to the TV show? But yeah, I mean, it's really pretty simple. It's just like, we have drone technology. You just make it bigger. It's shouldn't really be more complicated than that. And that's what most of these companies are doing. And so we'll just again see who gets there first. And then again, really, it's the first one to make it cheap enough that someone will take it over an Uber. I think that's just going to be a very big hurdle to climb or jump over, and we'll see who does that and when they do. And Mr. 705 says, if you had a budget of $100,000, what Porsche would you get? I mean, if we're talking new, I mean, it would have to definitely be, to me, Boxster GTS 4.0. My buddy has the Cayman GTS 4.0, loves it. I just personally like the Boxster better for the open roof thing. So that would probably be it. That's a little over 100 maybe. So maybe I'm cheating a little bit, or I get a lightly used one or whatever. Otherwise, I like regular 911s, but to me, the Porsches that are really desirable are just, GT3, especially GT3 Touring. And then again, those 4.0 Boxsters and Caymans. So, if I could get a used GT3, that would be fun too. But I like newer stuff too. So I think I'd probably just go Boxster, because I don't think there's going to be any 991 or newer GT3 going for anything close to 100 grand anymore. So I think Boxster GTS 4.0 is probably what I would pick. Ryan says, good evening. Last week I drove my 4Runner 110 miles nonstop dirt road one way through the desert. Popped a tire 85 miles in. Sketchy tire change on gravel with bottle jack. Been a while. Wow, that's wild. Well, hope you had a good time, and that's very cool. I actually just put about 200 miles on this. I have this TRD Pro 4Runner here, not through the desert, just going on regular highways. But I was doing some miles in a 4Runner this week as well. I was actually going to another junkyard, so stay tuned. That video has been filmed. I just need to get the rest of it edited. I just need pull apart to check it out, make sure that it's all good on their end. And then that will be going live here probably later this week, maybe this weekend. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to keep on doing those, and had another fun day at the junkyard here this week, and looking forward to seeing what you guys think about that as well. And Luke says, I don't mean to stereotype, but I like Bose. I think Bose is great. I've always been pretty impressed with, especially the modern Bose. Some of the older Bose, like the Bose and the C6 Corvette, was just trash in my opinion. But I think especially newer Boses have been, very good. And let me see. Vishal says, the TX is a great car. Lexus is needed. We love ours after 6 months of owning it, but confusing that it doesn't offer certain Lexus amenities like triple beam headlights or their exclusive colors like Nori Green. Interesting. I didn't know you couldn't get Nori Green on the TX. That's kind of odd. And I still don't know what the deal is with the plug-in hybrid TX. You can't even get a moonroof in that still. I don't know why they're being weird with the packaging on some of those. Hopefully they continue to open that up here as the model years go on. But Danny says, I listen to the radio in the boat because I need something to stimulate my ADHD brain, or I'll be starting to go crazy. I love vibing to 80s on 8. The Traverse still has its check engine light. Don't know when it goes to the dealer. Well, best of luck with getting that sorted. And with EVs, I mean, I am almost always listening to the stereo because there's really not anything else to listen to. Sometimes it's nice to have the peace and quiet personally and kind of not having stimulus, but most of the time I got the stereo going. Although in the Fiat, I actually did a lot of driving in the Fiat in the past week or two here too. I'm almost at 1,000 miles actually. I've been doing a pretty good job racking up miles here in the past week or so. But in that, actually, there is a decent amount of noise from the electric motor since there's not a lot of sound deadening. And I've actually just enjoyed driving in mostly silence, just hearing that little thing hum away. And that's also very pleasant in my opinion. But Jordan says, to my previous comment, Mercedes started out in aviation. Could a luxury Mercedes commercial plane make sense now, or does first class on current planes make more sense? Yeah, I think that's just kind of the something that has already kind of passed, and it's really hard. I mean, you look at Honda. Honda has done the Honda Jet, and really good fuel savings, it seems. But going up against the established brands is very hard, especially whenever you're talking about something that is carrying you hundreds of miles per hour, 35,000 feet up in the sky. You have a real narrow risk tolerance there, even the bravest of people typically. So Honda tried. I mean, I think they sell Honda Jets. I don't know. I have no idea whether that's a success in their mind or, commercially, if it's been a success to outsiders or not. But it's really hard, and so, especially again these days where companies are just trying to, again, they're struggling to even do this transition to EVs. Trying to get into, planes is just, yeah, going to be too hard. And also, you know, again, private jets, just everyone already has those established brands. Maybe you could, improve that. But the other thing to keep in mind too is when you're playing with that kind of money, you're not waiting for a company to do the things that you want it to do. So, for example, if some super rich person has a private jet, they want their plane to feel like a Mercedes inside, they'll just drop however many millions of dollars it costs to make their plane like a Mercedes inside. They'll scrap a brand new Maybach and put the seats in, or you're playing by different rules at that point. It's very much just like, I want this and I pay whatever I need to get that. And, instead of hoping Mercedes does it for you someday, you just do it yourself. So I think there's probably that hurdle as well, that there's no real incentive for Mercedes or any luxury brand really to try and topple over the established brands. Even if we're talking about drone stuff and things like that, I'm sure Bombardier and all these other private jet companies are already at the forefront of that, and will certainly want to make sure they kind of keep their top dog status in those developments as well. But who knows? Maybe if one of these private jet companies has some terrible flaw with one of their future jets, like we're seeing all the stuff Boeing's been going through, maybe there'll be an opportunity for someone else to step in. But that just takes so long to develop and get a reputation for that, because it's a whole different world. It's a completely different thing. This is why like those Rolls-Royce engines in commercial jets currently, but it's not even remotely related to the actual automotive company anymore. It's a completely different company, different headquarters, different everything. So it's a whole different world, I think, and it's very hard. And Honda has tried, and they're the example to kind of keep an eye on if you're interested in someone trying that. See if that continues to succeed for them or not. That'll kind of tell you whether other companies will feel brave enough to ever try it as well. Vakusha says, thoughts on a GR Corolla Auto as a daily. All right, everyone, get your shots out here. We're mentioning GR Corolla. So the running joke is that I usually mention GR Corolla at least once in these live streams, just usually on my own accord, not so much others asking about it. But GR Corolla is a fantastic daily. I've lived with one for a week with the manual. I haven't lived with the auto for a week. I'm still waiting for an auto. I've been told, I think, hopefully before the end of this year, there will be an auto one in the fleet for me to try out for a week. But I was very impressed with that on the first drive last year. Very quick shifts. It's really well done. And if the manual doesn't work for you and your commute or your lifestyle, the automatic is really good. I'm very happy with it. Now, I've gotten so much crap from all the Mark 8 Golf R owners that, the Golf R is superior in every way in their opinion. I don't agree. I think GR Corolla is way more fun, even if it's not as fast or doesn't put down as impressive numbers on the dyno, or can't be modded to 1,000 horsepower as easily or whatever. But yeah, so it comes down to, again, what you're looking for and everything. But personally, yes, I wholeheartedly condone daily driving a GR Corolla. If I needed a daily driver with 4 doors, I would probably, and I can afford it, of course, I'd definitely be rocking a GR Corolla right now. And that's the thing people ask, very frequently in these lives, if I were to get another car soon, what would I get? Things like that. And if I could afford it, GR Corolla absolutely is calling my name. That is the next car that I want. Especially needing something that's practical these days. That's it's funny how I feel like I think about GR Corolla at least like once a week. It's like it really stuck with me that much. It's just so engaging, so fun, and man, I miss it. It's been like maybe 3 or 4 months since I had one for a week, and I'm like already itching to get back into one as soon as I can. But again, everyone's different, but hopefully it helps you a little bit there. And Chad, thanks so much for gifting a membership. I really appreciate the generosity and happy to see that Lorenzo was able to get that one. And all right, so we're about at the 1 hour mark. So I'll go through the last few questions here and we'll head on out. So see, Danny thinks the Traverse check engine light was from possibly an overfilled tank or it has a bad purge valve. Okay, yeah. Well, hopefully they get it figured out either way. YH says, I turned off my auto brake thingy. If $1 million sensors fail on planes, then car ones can definitely fail. Sometimes the blind spot monitoring turns on even when no one is around. Yeah, and there have been, there was some extra glitches initially whenever those kinds of systems were first implemented, 2017, 2018. I mean, yeah, that's absolutely happened. I mean, even Beth in her C classes that she had back in the day, I think the first one actually, it would always hallucinate and like pretend it was seeing ghosts that it had to slam on the brakes for. It wasn't all the time. I think there was certain times where it would just freak out and beep, but it wouldn't actually hit the brakes. But I believe, I can't remember if it was her first C class or her second one. They did do a full ABS stop one time for zero reason. Now that was again several years ago. I think modern stuff has gotten much better. I know the Mach-E never did any kind of scare on her or me when we were driving it. And I know Lyric's been flawless so far. I mean, it's only 1,500 miles in on that one, but been great so far. And I can say too that every single car basically I drive these days, every single week I'm driving a car with that technology and all the press cars. I've never had a full ABS stop happen for no reason. So it could fail. But if it fails, typically, again, if you're driving, you can also override that stuff a little bit. But if you're worried about people, like tailgating you nonstop, maybe it'd be a concern. But in that case, that's on them anyway, if the car breaks. But again, it's very, very rare these days. So I think you can put a little more trust into these systems than you did before, because it has gotten a lot better. And if you're in a 2024 Mustang, they should have figured that out by now. So I don't think you have to worry. And if it does fail, I mean, again, it's just only the rear ending you need to worry about, because you're not relying on it obviously to stop for you. Whenever we're talking about normal emergencies, like you're hitting the brakes and the car is just supposed to be there to catch you if you don't hit the brakes fast enough, or if you're something else happens where the car needs to step in and help you out. Otherwise, you're doing all that anyway. So I would encourage leaving it on for everybody, because I think it just makes everyone safer, unless you've seen reports of your specific car having false braking, but that would then fall under a recall and a warranty kind of thing, because those have been pretty much perfected at this point. And now they just get better and better with detecting things. But yeah, I think it's been mostly all the bugs have been worked out of that stuff. Ryan says, yeah, I think the car consulting has tons of potential, but it's going to be price sensitive. There's a lot of car research options out there. Absolutely. And that is, definitely what I'm going up against. And I mean, the whole point of these reviews, if I am doing my job well enough, I think that should get you a large percentage of the way. But I think it's, again, trying to just help some people go that last step, get them over the finish line there, of, okay, I've narrowed it down. I know I like this car or that car or whatever. And one of the people that actually was helping, they had basically figured out, I mean, we actually did 2 calls. The first one was kind of, they had other ideas, but they were really kind of wanting one specific vehicle, and they had a familiarity with the brand and the model and all that. I'm like, okay, like clearly this is your comfort zone. This is probably going to be the best fit for you. And the second call was actually just kind of talking through pricing, and I kind of helped him figure out, okay, well, what is the actual invoice pricing? What's the dealer holdback? And realistically, kind of constructing, this is how much discount you can realistically expect before this guy's giving this car away to you, and just so that they kind of went into the negotiations armed with the knowledge of, look, I know that if I get any discount bigger than this, you're losing money on the deal. And he's like, I don't want you to lose money on the deal. I'm willing to pay a couple $100 for your services of selling the car to me or whatever. And so he was able to go in and give him a very good offer. And one dealer was playing games with him, but the other dealer said, yep, that works for us. It was smooth, easy, no headaches. And I'm just thankful I was able to help them with that. So I think that's also part of it too, that I'm going to hopefully help people with, in addition to just selecting a car, but also making sure they get it hopefully for a good price too. So hopefully like with that client in particular, hopefully even though they paid me for the help, I think in the end I probably did save them, if not just the frustration of the haggling. I also saved them, I think, some actual money too. So we'll see. But I think it's also just awareness. I think, it's just something that's still pretty new. Most people don't know that I do it. And it's just going to take a little bit of time. So we'll see what happens. But thanks for asking about that, Ryan, though. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. But Danny says, which purge valve going bad? We are not ruling out, but it has only 42,000 miles. And then we realized it's 6 years old. We got it in May of 2019. So coming up on 7 years this coming May. Yeah, I mean, that early, you would think it would be that. So it's probably just an overfill. That probably makes the most sense. Sometimes even just, if the gas cap isn't tightened just right, that can cause an issue, anything like that. He says, we got the Traverse and the Bolt at the same time. We bought the Bolt and then leased the Traverse for 3 years, then bought out the lease. Nice. Well, yeah, glad that worked out for you. And Vishal says, I see a fair amount of Crown Signias around me as well. Definitely more popular than I expected. I also see some Crown sedans frequently too. That's cool. I very rarely see the sedan, but I'm glad that they're popular around you as well for the Signias. So maybe Toyota's actually finally figuring out production and churning those things out. That's great. I'm so happy people are totally, down for what is essentially a wagon. That's good to hear. Thanks for sharing, Michelle. And let me see. Wyatt says, I like the Mazda 3 hatchback. It's fun, especially with the turbo and the manual. Yeah, they're great. I've always enjoyed the Mazda 3s. Yeah, I just reviewed the manual there and the turbo a couple years back. They're both great. And Danny says the V6 and the Traverse is peppy and the transmission is good too. I tried driving it once and I'm so used to the Bolt being an EV. The switch to a gas car is hard for me. I mean, the throttle is touchy. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's definitely an adjustment period. The instant responsive EVs, and then to be like, oh wait, I have to wait now with this gas car. It definitely is something. It takes a little getting used to, even for me, adjusting from one press car to the next sometimes. And Danny says, my dad one time decided the Traverse, we call it the truck, needed a good Italian tune-up, and just decided to get put it straight to the floor. And got the thing can get up and out of its own way real easy. Yeah, good old V6s have a nice strong feel still. And Jordan says, should vehicles have an exterior sensor to lower interior media when an emergency vehicle is approaching? Headrest speaker, Bluetooth calls, etc. Yeah, I mean that would make sense. I think with emergency vehicles though, like the lights are also supposed to fill in for what you may or may not hear. So I think that's why it's just full sensory overload with with emergency vehicles for that reason. Because I think if you really got to be out of it to not see the lights, if you don't hear the sounds because you got your stereo up or whatever, that's one thing. But if you're not seeing bright flashing lights all around you, then you're probably too far out of it for that to help, even if you did have the volume lowered, in my opinion at least. And Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. He says Suzuki owners only visit Toyota shops. They probably just go to independent shops at this point. But it's a good question. I've never talked to a Suzuki owner to know recently. But thank you, Jordan. And Jorge, thank you so much for a super chat as well. Very generous one. He says, about the car therapy and consulting, I hope you keep doing it until at least my next purchase. I appreciate the objectivity. I'm a smart guy, but cars tend to be an emotional purchase for me. Yeah. I agree. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with the emotional purchase, because at the end of the day, it's about something that is supposed to make you feel good, and that's, again, that's my mantra here for this channel, is helping you find a car you'll love, so that every day, every commute is just a little bit more fun than if you were in something that you didn't like as much, and so that's definitely an important part of it. But I think you can blend the emotional with the objective and say, okay, well, I really like the styling in all three of these cars, and then say which one is, the better for this, that, or the other. So yeah, I'm definitely going to keep doing. I mean, it does cost me a little bit to keep up the whole service every month, just because there's fees associated with all the hosting of everything and all that. But I'm going to keep it up, I think, for a long time, and just have it there as an option for those who do want to do it. So don't worry, it'll still be there, I think, whenever you're ready, Jorge. But hopefully you keep enjoying your current car for a long time and you won't need my services. But thanks so much again for the super chat and for stopping by. And all right, last few questions here. So where were we here? Chad says, if the U.S. military shared its tech, then self-driving would already be done, in my opinion. I'd rather distracted drivers do that, and I can go 100 in the left lane. Right. Yeah. Like I said, as long as it doesn't, raise insurance rates for us drivers, that sounds good to me too. Chad says, seeing the Ram commercial with no substance, just saying America is back, you can't stop America, etc., but no legit justification for bringing back the V8 Hemi was kind of eye-opening. Yeah, it's, especially these days, I don't know how well timed those marketing ads are, but yeah, it's, it is what it is. I kind of talked about this on Sundays last year as well with the V8 Rams. I think it's kind of a step backwards, but they got to do what they got to do. And if Ram buyers only want the slower, less efficient V8s because they sound better, I guess that's the fate that Ram is stuck with, so that's, I guess they might as well own it if that's if that's what they're stuck in. Then there's nothing you can do about it. They're just doomed to be just the one that is driven by people that just like that, and are not interested in progress with that great Hurricane motor, but it's all good. There's a lot of people still driving the Pentastar V6 Rams and are happy with those, so it all comes down to what you want. Jordan says, have you ever inherited a press vehicle from a previous reviewer? What happens to the press vehicles? They go straight to CarMax or Carvana. So as far as press vehicles, there's a lot of us in the same fleet, so a lot of times me and Sufjan from Midland Reviews, I'll get a car and then he'll get it, or he'll get it first and I'll get it. And it'll be kind of funny because sometimes even in like the Bluetooth, the previously paired Bluetooth devices in our car, you can see, and I'm adding my phone, and there's a whole list of all these journalists that I know and their phones that previously were, paired to the car or something. Sophian's iPhone is like, no, not mine. But so there's that kind of stuff, which is fun. And we look out for each other too. Like, sometimes if it's something that, like Sophian knows I'm really excited about, he's like, oh, I made sure, that I was extra careful with it or whatever, and vice versa, and it's great. We also give each other a heads up of like, hey, I just got this awesome thing scheduled. Make sure, you ask for it too or whatever, and trying to always help each other out, because, the rising tide lifts all boats in this car reviewer world, in my opinion. But as far as what happens to the press vehicles, they basically go straight to the auction and are sold as used cars most of the time. If it is a pre-production car, then it'll be crushed. Those aren't super common, but like a lot of the Toyota press cars, the early ones, oftentimes are pre-production. And so those cars, after they're done with it, I think usually the cap is 12,000 miles. Sometimes they end up pulling them earlier than that though. But once they've done all the miles they want them to do, those ones will actually just go straight to the crusher. Same thing goes for a lot of show cars. And Like a lot of the cars, if you guys see like us do first look videos on a car that was just revealed and we're just doing a walk around, those cars have really glitchy dashes sometimes and, are rougher, because they're not production quality. Like that brand new shiny car that you see in a zillion thumbnails get millions of views, that famous car just gets crushed most of the time. I mean, sometimes they also get donated like to firefighting schools to, be used as vehicles to, extricate people and practice, jaws of life and all those types of things. So there's some other things they do, but they must be destroyed because they can't be registered whenever we're talking about those early prototypes. But most of the press cars are production quality, and then they will just, go and be sold after that. But Chad says, do you have a favorite fictional or movie special car? Herbie, Batmobile, etc. Definitely the Bullet Mustang is my top one. Outside of that, Batmobile is also a top one. You can also see the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Probably one of the top ones for me too. Yeah, I say Bullet, probably DeLorean, and then Tumbler from Dark Knight. And Batman Begins, the whole Nolan series. Those are the top ones. Herbie's a fun one too. There's actually someone around here who has a screen used Herbie that I see at car shows whenever I, go every once in a while. And so, yeah, Herbie's cool. I love movie cars in general. I think just the magic of movies and the cars that are featured in them always for me is a very special thing. So I like almost all movie cars, really. And Chaz says, we watched Jay Leno's Garage with an imported TVR. Of course, a beautiful but unreliable car. But I was enamored with the hood when raised. It looks like artwork. That's cool. Yeah, a lot of those like, front hinged hoods are really cool. So many of those, Paganis and things like that have really elaborate kind of hood openings. Etch says a Ford Mustang Jet makes more sense, especially if it's driven by you, right? Etch. Chad says VTEC on a Jet. Yeah, it'd be fun if it had some kind of extra thruster or something there for the Honda Jet, but they're not playing around with that. Wyatt says, I'm sure even Kia can make safer planes than Boeing. Yeah, and Kia makes great safe vehicles, so I would have full confidence in their abilities there. Let me see. Chad says, at least their doors don't fly off. That's true. Michelle says 2026 TX plugin comes with a panel roof now. Oh, that's good. I guess I must have missed the 26 update. They added a red color. It's still a shame they don't offer the second row bench seating on any hybrid trims. And only the 350 you can get the bench. Yeah, that is still strange. But glad that they're at least adding in the luxury features there to hopefully make the plug-in hybrid a little bit more desirable. And Wyatt is drunk now after the GR Corolla mentions there. And all right, I think we're just about at the end here. So you see, Wyatt says, what about you going to the dealer with the custies and dealing with sales tactics on behalf of the customer? Okay, maybe you can do a video or do it via video call. As far as the consulting, yeah, that is a lot of extra work whenever it comes down to actually negotiating with dealers. Myself, even if I do come in with a really good offer, dealers are just they always have to do what they have to do, which is assume you're an idiot at first, give you a horrible offer, and then once you show them you're smarter than the average bear, then they say, oh crap, okay, well, and then you really start to get some meat off the bone, and you actually are making progress. But it's a whole time consuming process. Unfortunately, I don't have the time for that, and that is also an extra barrier to entry. The people I've seen that do the full negotiation, where they from start to finish help you figure out a car and then go and do the whole process of buying it and everything. I mean, that's most of those people charge anywhere between $500 to $1,000 for that service. And I'm confident if I give you a number and you go to a dealer and I've helped you, I can do all that for you for $135 or so, with the consultations that I do. I think you actually end up saving more money as long as you're willing to just, do that last little bit of negotiation with the dealer. I think that's the most cost-effective way to do it personally versus the concierge, white glove kind of service that some others offer. But, different offerings for everybody. And So yeah, we'll see what happens. But it's so stressful negotiating a car that's that's something I wouldn't want to do professionally for others. Unfortunately, I just after doing 2 this year, and I wasn't planning on doing any this year, and I ended up buying 2 cars this year. I'm not looking forward. I wish the Lyric lease was longer because it's only a 2-year lease. I was I really wanted it to be 3, but it just didn't make sense from a money standpoint because it's just the price gets so much higher on the lease on the Lyric after once you go beyond the 2-year mark. But we'll see what happens. I'm really hoping Cadillac is a really good buyout offer for the Lyric because we like it enough, at least so far, that we would totally just buy it out and just hang on to it until whenever. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't love negotiating any more than you guys do. That's for sure. And Wyatt says, first pilot, we're going down. Captain, we're waiting for the VTEC to kick in. Right. Yeah. Anyway, Jordan and Chad say thanks for the live here. Yeah, thank you all so much for joining in. I hope you enjoyed this one. And yeah, we'll see you here on Sunday for the first one with the new phone and hopefully some even slightly better quality. We'll have to see. And stay tuned for another review here tomorrow and hopefully a junkyard video this weekend. We'll see. But anyway, thank you all so much once again. Thanks for all the super chats and the giftings and all that. I really appreciate all that as well. And hope you guys have a great, happy, healthy, safe rest of your week. Take care.